I will be muting everybody, so all are requested to be on mute. President Tej, kindly start.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Hope all are doing well. We are here today on a special club meeting for speaker meeting on the topic of role biodiversity plays in our health and future. The speakers of today's meeting is Ms. Patricia Zurita. She's the CEO of Birdlife International UK. Before we start the meeting, I would just like to make an announcement regarding our Rotarian Vijay Kevalramani ji. He is, first of all, big congratulations to him. He's been inducted as an honorary member of Rotary Club of Thane Meridian, Thane. So it's a big achievement and a proud moment for us. So hats off to you, Vijay ji.
Thank you, President.
I would now like Vijay ji to take over and conduct the meeting.
We would start with the four-way test. I would request Rotarian Ranjana to kindly read the four-way test, please.
No, not me.
Yeah, you read it. No problem. Ranjana, you can read the four-way test.
Good evening. The Rotary's four-way test is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And finally, will it be beneficial to all concerned? This is the main Rotary four-way test.
Thank you, Ranjana ji.
Thank you.
Yeah, and now I would request Rotarian John from Rotary Club of Ministers Hill to say the Rotary objects, please.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. My Rotary President, other Rotary Presidents present, Uncle Sam, past President and District Officers present, fellow Rotarians. The objects of Rotary. The objects of Rotary is to encourage and foster the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise, and in particular, to encourage and foster, first, the development of acquaintance as an opportunity for service. Second, high ethical standards in business and professions, the recognition of the worthiness of all useful occupations, and the dignifying of each Rotarian's occupation as an opportunity to serve society. Third, the application of the ideal of service in each Rotarian's personal, business, and community life. Fourth, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world fellowship of business and professional persons united in the ideal of service. The object of Rotary, my president.
Thank you, President John. Thank you for the objects of Rotary. Now I would request IPP of Rotary Club of Ulhasnagar East, Rotarian Mahendra Hingorani, to introduce our today's speaker, please. Mahendra ji, please. Mahendra ji, kindly unmute and speak.
Very good evening to all. It is a privilege to introduce Patricia ji. Patricia ji is Chief Executive Officer of Birdlife International, the world's largest nature conservation partnership, bringing together over 115 organizations worldwide to conserve the birds, their habitat, and global biodiversity. Working with people towards substantially is the use of natural resources. Patricia is also the first woman from a developing country to become CEO of an international conservation organization. Prior to Birdlife, Patricia was Executive Director of the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, CEPF, a global multi-donor fund enabling civil society to participate in and benefit for conserving some of the world's most critical ecosystem. Patricia also led the Conservation Steward Program in Conservation International CI, implementing conservation agreements that provided economic incentives to the local and indigenous communities in developing countries in exchange of their commitment to protect biodiversity. Before that, Patricia worked with the government of Ecuador monitoring the oil and gas industry and infrastructure in a national park and reserve, which led her to pursue a master's in natural resource economics in Duke University at the Duke University in the US.
Between stories, if you want to chat.
Kindly welcome Patricia ji.
Patricia, all yours.
Thank you so much, Vijay, and thanks so much for the introduction. As you heard, my name is Patricia Zurita. I am the Chief Executive of Birdlife International. It is a pleasure to be with all of you. Vijay, thank you so much for reaching out and for inviting me. I was asked to talk a little bit more about the relationship between nature and health. And I wanted to do a quick test, if I can, and perhaps ask you guys, does it really matter? How many of you, so using your if you go to the participants logo underneath, and you are able to, I don't know if you can raise hands or not, but if you can tell me how many of you think that nature impacts our health, human health. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very good. All right, good. So what I wanted to do was, what I'm gonna do is give you a little bit of a sense of what Birdlife is first, and then we're going to talk about the relationship with between health and nature, and what's happening precisely this couple of weeks, this week, next week, and the following in New York or everywhere really, with all the people of the United Nations program and the UN General Assembly, the Environment Program, the Development Program of the United Nations, and all of us around the world who actually work on the conservation of nature. And explain to you, why does this matter? So bear with me just 1 second. I'm going to share with you my screen and we'll walk through this in a minute. Just checking with all of you if you can see my screen.
Yes,
Perfect. All right. So Birdlife is the largest partnership for nature. We are very different than any other international conservation organization because we don't parachute programs in different parts of the world. What we do is identify local organizations that are working in each of the countries, and they become the Birdlife partner. And we are together a family of national conservation organizations, but we work together because unless we are that we collaborate, we will not be able to save our planet. Thank you. So all of the countries that you see on the map here on blue are countries where Birdlife has a partner or a country where we have programs. And as I said, we are the largest partnership for nature. We have over 7 million members and supporters, 10 million between members and supporters that are actually helping us make a difference for nature and birds. We are one of the few truly global conservation organizations on the planet. And the model that we have, as I said, is very different. So each of these are the organizations that are part of the BirdLife family. We were just talking about Nigeria. NCF, the Nature Conservation Foundation, the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, is the BirdLife partner in Nigeria. BNHS, the Bombay National Natural History Society, is the BirdLife partner in India. We were talking about the US. In the US, we have two partners. We have the National Audubon Society and American Bird Conservancy. All of these are local national conservation organizations that have their own identity, their own autonomy, but we all come together under the BirdLife umbrella because we realize that unless we work together on one planet, we will not be able to save our nature. Just a second, I don't know why this is not moving. It may be okay. Now, the name may give you a hint of one of the things that we do. We use birds. Birds are extraordinary ambassadors to save life. They are the canary in the coal mine. They are the ones who are telling us the status of the planet. And the reason why we work with birds is not only because we love them and because they're beautiful, but particularly because they are the most published taxonomic group. What does that mean? That in a year, so this is data from 2017, and it hasn't changed that much. In a given year, we would have 1,200 publications, scientific publications of data or information about birds versus 700 on mammals or 95 on spiders or 11 on sponges. So that means that there's more information and observations about birds than any other group of organisms in the planet. But the nice thing about birds is that they are a really excellent indicator of what's happening with the rest of the planet. So for example, today I was being bombarded by messages of an article that came out in The Guardian talking about thousands of birds dropping dead in the southwest of the US. And we are almost sure that that is related to the fires and the smoke in the western part of the US right now. They are telling us what's happening. Their reaction, their quick adaptation, the quick changes that we see in bird populations allow us to understand the complexities of other systems, of marine systems, of terrestrial systems, of grasslands, of forests, of anything that is on the planet. And birds are in absolutely every single continent of the world. So that's why we work with birds. Let me see if this is working. Okay, now one of the reasons why I moved to BirdLife 5 years ago is because of the science that BirdLife has. So we are an extraordinary scientific authority, and I will share with you some of the stuff that we have been publishing in the last couple of days that have been incredibly active. But we are the Red List Authority for birds. What does it mean? The International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, has something that is called the Red List. The Red List is an indicator of how closer to extinction or how far from extinctions different species are. BirdLife, we are the Red List Authority for all the birds on the planet. So we determined every year of the 11,000 species of birds which are closer to extinction, which are safer from extinction. And that gives huge amounts of information to the conservation community to direct action to be able to save nature in the most important places. Now, and I don't know why this picture is so blurry. And I apologize for that because it wasn't like that a minute ago. I hope that you guys can see it well. But all of these red spots all over the world, on land and ocean, are what we call the important birds and biodiversity areas. So with the information of the birds, we go and look into what are the places that need to be conserved, that need to be restored, that need to be protected. And these are the 13,000 important birds and biodiversity areas of the planet that cover 26 million square kilometers, or 7.4% of the terrestrial surface and 6.4% of the marine surface. Why are we doing this? It's a matter of prioritization. The conservation movement doesn't have all of the resources of the world, so we have to prioritize and make sure that we're saving the most important places for species and for nature. So if we concentrate on these red areas, we will be doing much more impact than concentrating everywhere or concentrating in the areas that are non-red. Okay. Now, I was asked to talk about, not bird life only, but about why nature matters to health. And I wanted to share with you a short video that was put together by a friend of ours at the Global Wildlife Conservation, a conservation organization based in the United States, but who works with us and with others around the world. And I just felt that with their permission, it was important to share this video with you guys because it's an excellent explanation of the crisis that we're living right now. So if you bear with me just 1 second, let me show this to you and hopefully you will be able to see it and hear it properly.
Dear humankind, thank you for being a superhost. I never imagined I'd have the opportunity to jump to a species as abundant as you. Most viruses only get to know their original host animal. Many exist entirely in the humid understory of a remote rainforest. We viruses are kept in check by healthy environments with diverse and abundant wildlife. But when you rip forests apart and capture billions of animals to feed your insatiable appetite for flesh and false cures, you bring viruses like me out of our natural quarantines. You introduce us to new hosts, like you. A superhost of 8 billion individuals and counting. A walking, flying, swimming, human meat market. You make up 1/3 of all mammals on Earth by weight. The animals you grow to feed yourselves outweigh all the wild mammals and birds on the planet. As you drive our natural wildlife hosts to extinction, you throw us life rafts bigger than the Titanic. Why wouldn't I jump? As sinister as I may seem, it is not in my interest to wipe out my hosts. We all need other life to thrive. So if this sickness in your bodies opens your eyes to the deeper sickness in our shared planet, it will be to all our benefit. But my big question to you is this: am I enough? If apocalyptic fires aren't enough, if vanishing glaciers aren't enough, if super hurricanes aren't enough, is the cold shadow I cast across the lives of you and your loved ones enough for you to finally confront the prospect of your own extinction? Only you, humankind, can choose to be the cure to the deeper sickness. Only you can choose to nurture the ancient oceans, forests, and grasslands that nurture you, to bring back the chorus of birds and monkeys to silent rainforests, and to make wise choices every day in what you consume and how you live. By protecting nature in all its wild and wonderful forms, you protect yourselves. As the earth stops to take a collective deep breath, you have a rare opportunity to reimagine and redefine a new future. So tell me, what future do you choose?
So it is an incredibly powerful video. Sorry, I'm trying to move away from this. Let's see if it lets me. Yeah, okay. So it is an incredibly powerful video that tells us that there is a huge and very direct connection between the status of nature and the current pandemic. And I just wanted to give you a little bit more of information of what's happening with the planet, because unless we actually change the status of nature, unless we actually act on protecting and restoring our nature, more of these pandemics are going to happen, as you heard it on the video. Just last week, WWF launched the 2020 Living Planet report. It was released to show that the population sizes of mammals, birds, fish, amphibian, and reptiles have declined on average by 68% since 1970. A little bit before I was born, over this period of time, we have lost 68% of important populations of mammals, birds, fish, amphibians, and reptiles. We are driving species to extinction because we are destroying habitats, because we're overexploiting, like in fisheries, for example, because we're polluting our environment, because we are carrying invasive species from one place to the other, and because of the impact of climate change. I'm just checking the chat to make sure that I'm not losing anything. Okay. Now, there is reason for hope. We, the conservation community, have been working tirelessly to make sure that we can try to save this species. And yes, we're probably not doing the perfect job in scaling up our solutions, but I think it is incredibly important to share that because of our work, we have been able to avoid extinctions in different parts of the world. So Birdlife just published a paper on Friday last week, where we were showing that between 28 and 48 birds and mammal species would have gone extinct without the conservation actions they received since the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, came into force in 1993. So you may remember, or you may have heard, that in 1992 in Rio, in Brazil, there was something that was called the Summit for the Planet. And at that point, there was the launching of 4 global conventions from United Nations, but with all the governments that are part of United Nations. So the first one is the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Convention on Climate Change, so the UNFCCC, that is the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, the Convention on Desertifications and Droughts, and the Convention on Toxics and Chemical Releases. And that is called the Montreal Protocol, really. So since 1992, conservation actions done by everybody, not only by Birdlife, has avoided the extinction of between 28 and 48 species. Now, that is equivalent to avoiding the loss of 120 million years of evolutionary history for birds and 26 million years of evolutionary history for mammals. Why does this matter? By having all these species that have been able to evolve and adapt to the different situations of the planet, we can keep our systems in check. We can keep those viruses and those bacteria in check and not expose them to us to kill us. If these extinctions would have happened, the extinction rate would be between 3 and 4 times higher. So we are proving that conservation action actually is working. We just need to do more of it. And we can still bend the curve of biodiversity loss if we are growing and by protecting our nature while growing enough food for the expanding human population. So we can definitely make it happen, but what we need to do is increase the extent of land under conservation management. So protected areas, reserves, indigenous and local people's reserves, all those lands that are dedicated to protecting nature. I mean, remember, we have less than 20% of the planet under conservation management. We are advocating for at least 30% of the planet being protected. Why? Because we live in a system that needs to be balanced. Nature is part of the system that provides us with goods and services. Without nature, there's no pollination. Without nature, there's no water. Without nature, we don't go healthy. So if we increase the extent of land under conservation management at least to 30%, we will be able to manage things a little better. Now, that's not enough. We also have to restore degraded lands. And many of you are in India. I had an absolutely fantastic program working in the Western Ghats, in the Nilgiris, restoring forests that had been standing many years ago, and that had been lost because of agriculture, because of timber extraction, because of different reasons. And we started restoring them, generating jobs for people, but also reestablishing the cultural connection that people had to their land. And it is possible, and especially now that we're talking about COVID and the importance of reigniting our economy and the economic impact that the COVID pandemic has had, we have to think about how important it is, the opportunity to restore our nature as a source of jobs. So when we're thinking about reigniting the economy, it's not only about thinking about more infrastructure, more roads, more bridges, more mines. No, let's think about a different way. We can build back better by thinking about creating jobs that can help us restore, particularly the lands close to these conservation areas that have been degraded. Now we have to change the way that we are doing our agriculture and our fisheries. We have to implement sustainable intensification, improve the way that we're trading, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but also reduce food waste and meat consumption. We have seen that the minute that numbers out in the world, and you probably know this very well, show that we have more than enough food for the whole planet. The problem is not that. The problem is that it's not well distributed and that it's not grown in the places where people need it the most. So thinking about a reorganization of the agricultural system, thinking about reducing the waste that we are having right now, and thinking about better ways of feeding ourselves can help us improve the way that nature will be in the future. Now, I have to apologize for this very horrible slide. This is a screenshot of just yesterday night when the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBES here, launched something that is called the Global Biodiversity Outlook 5. So the Convention of Biological Diversity has to produce a report every 5 years to tell us what's happening with nature. And one of the things that came out of the GBO5 yesterday was the desperate need that the planet has for 8 key transitions. We have to change the way that we're treating our lands and our forests. We have to change the way that we're doing agriculture and forget about just monocultures. Agriculture is part of a natural system. It has to have multiple species. We have to ensure that we're using less pesticides. We have to think about an integrated and regenerative way of growing our food. We have to change the food systems so we can make sure that we are distributing and enabling people, particularly the poorest and the ones who have least access, so they can have food while food is not wasted in other countries. We need to treat better our oceans and be more careful about the way that we fish our fisheries and ensure that we're not overfishing everywhere in the planet, but rather give the chance fisheries to recover. And this has been tested and has been successful in many places. When I used to live in the United States, there was a huge celebration for the recovery of the lobster fishery in New England. Or just, you know, a couple of years before I came to the UK, huge celebration for the Atlantic cod recovery in the North Atlantic. It is possible. Nature is incredibly generous, and the minute that we give it a chance, it actually comes back. So we just need to be careful about the way that we're treating it. We have to think better about our cities and our infrastructure. There's a huge opportunity for something that is called green infrastructure. And that is not only wonderful parks and areas of recreation in cities, but it is about green walls to cool the temperature of the cities, especially now that we're living the impact of climate change. I mean, I don't know, for those of you who are in London, we have had the hottest September. Yesterday in Cambridge, where I live, we were at 30 degrees when we're supposed to be cooling down right now. So there are opportunities of creating greener infrastructure, and we have to be careful about fresh water. And fresh water is not only about the infrastructure that is needed to provide people with fresh water and potable water, but very importantly, the sources from where that fresh water comes: forests, wetlands, grasslands that are incredibly important systems that capture water and provides the water for us. If they are not in good shape, we run out of water. So you may not be aware, but in the early 2000s, or maybe in the 1990s, the government of New York State in the United States passed a law to make sure that they were restoring and protecting the Catskills. The Catskills is this group of amazing forest lands and mountains in the western part of New York State that actually provides water to New York City. So without the Catskills protected, without the Catskills in good state as forests, not as developed lands, New York City, one of the biggest metropolis of the planet, will run out of water, fresh water for the people. So there's a huge connection between our health, our well-being, and our survival to nature. And they end up with an element of biodiversity, inclusive One Health. When we're thinking about health, we have to think about nature. We cannot be healthy without nature. So apologies for the ugly slide, but I just thought that it was important to share with you this tweet that came out yesterday, because these are 8 important transformations that the planet has to go through if we want to save our nature. So it is truly in your hands, in my hands, in everybody's hands. And what can you do to help with this? My first plea would be join in with the conservation movement. All of us in the conservation community are trying to fight for nature. All of us are doing our best to demonstrate that working for and with nature is beneficial to people, is beneficial to governments, is beneficial to the private sector. But unfortunately, we don't have enough resources. Unless we actually join forces, and resources, it doesn't mean necessarily money. It is about money, but it's also about capacity. So for those of you who are entrepreneurs, for those of you who are chief executives or high executives of private companies, there's a huge opportunity of working and joining forces with the conservation sector. For example, I just throw an example to you. I am in the process of working with a very big auditing firm in a pro bono basis, because they are going to be working with us on looking at how can we make our data of biodiversity available to the financial markets. So there are these strange connections of these different worlds that can happen if we work together, if we volunteer, if we support the conservation movement to ensure that we can together save the nature of our planet. Second thing, reduce your waste. We have become in different parts of the world more than others, a very wasteful society. We buy. And we have to remember that we are living in a very delicate system that has to be balanced. And when we are buying, we have to think and act carefully and remember, where are you buying? What's happening with the impact of what you are buying? So think about this. You buy a chocolate bar anywhere. The cocoa that was produced to, or that was grown to produce that chocolate bar may have been related to the cutting of hundreds of hectares around the world. The soap that you may be using may have tons of palm oil that has been devastating for, and I heard that there was someone from Indonesia, to the forest in Sumatra. The vehicles that we use, can we be more conscious about renewables, or use less fuel? Fuel is not only destroying a lot of nature in the places where it's being exploited, but also it's not helping us with climate change. So we can have a great impact if we become a lot more conscious about sourcing our stuff, whatever it is, locally and sustainably. And be a champion of the change. We are at a time, and I think the COVID pandemic has shown us that we are at a time when we need transformational change. The planet cannot keep going like it's going. And we can do this if we work together. But if people just forget about COVID and just, a year from now, when everything is back to normal and everybody's traveling again and everybody's moving around, we forget that this happened, we would not be able to make sure that the planet survives. So I just want to finish with 2 more slides. I wanted to let you know that the Birdlife family has launched a campaign that is actually being discussed today in New York, or in the virtual world, hosted by New York, about including the right to a healthy environment in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You may not be aware, but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was created or passed in 1948 after the Second World War happened, to prevent the atrocities of the war to continue to happen. We believe that the COVID pandemic has created a catastrophe as bad as the Second World War. And we do have, apologies, let me just open the door. My children are arriving from school and I cannot believe this. Oh, sorry. Sorry. So after following the example of the creation of the creation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we think that because the COVID pandemic has been so catastrophic, not only to human lives, but to the economy of the planet, that we deserve to think about the right to a healthy environment as a human right. We believe that if we elevate the right to a healthy environment to the level of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we all will start taking a lot more conscience on respecting, restoring, and protecting our nature. So I would like to invite all of you to sign our petition. The URL is oneplanet.oneright.org. We have over 800 organizations supporting this. We're very, very close. This is a screenshot of a couple of hours ago. We're very close to reaching 100,000 signatures. We truly believe that if we elevate the right to a healthy natural environment to that level of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we will be able to cascade transformational change that can help us make sure that nature is protected for the benefit of the million of species that share the planet with us, but to the benefit of our human beings on the planet. So join me and help me sign the petition. Help us get to the 100,000, and and join our flock. Join the Birdlife flock. Help us move the needle so we can get our nature to be more protected, and we together will be able to save our planet and our future. So that is it from me. I want to thank you all for having me and inviting me to this incredible gathering. And I'm more than happy to answer questions or have comments. I hope that that was clear and useful, and apologies for that interruption with the bell.
Thank you, Patricia, for sharing the knowledge and informing us about the risks that we are facing, not only to our health, but also to the flora and fauna. Now the floor is open for any queries. If anybody has any queries, kindly raise your hand so we can unmute and you can ask the question. Kedarji, you would like to ask a question, please. Kindly unmute, yeah.
I think, Patricia, you are just awesome. And I think that's the kind of a thing we are looking for in India too. And I think post the Silent Spring by Rachel Carlson, I think we are reaching a stage of major destruction in the biodiversity and the ecosystems. I think such a declaration and going up to the, it becomes a kind of a right. I think that is what can save this planet. We have to save the earth, we have to save the nature, we have to save trees, and we have to save the water. Awesome presentation.
Anybody would like to ask a question, you are please kindly raise your hand. So
and only if it would be good if you can share the link so that we can join.
Patricia, you can share the link on the chat. So about this petition. Yeah, Gadreji, please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, Madam, I just read that in some of the countries, I think in Germany, they are thinking of whatever the dams which were constructed, where the flow of the water was disrupted. And due to this, a lot of difficulties were faced by the fish who are going upstream. So is this advisable for all the countries, or because we are having problems for irrigation also? So we are on the verge of, we are constructing more and more dams, whereas at some countries like in Germany, I heard that they are thinking of whatever the dams have been already constructed to demolish those dams and to have a continuous flow of water. So if you have anything on that, you can comment upon this. I think you have to unmute yourself.
There you go. No, thanks so much for that question. I think it is incredibly important to remember that every country and every region has a different situation. In some countries, like in India, for example, with monsoons being a lot more aggressive, with a lot more water coming, and droughts in some of the cases happening a lot more extensively, or drylands going on fire. I mean, we're seeing what's happening in not only in California, that has been very public, but what is happening in southern part of South America. So those of you who may have heard about the Pantanal is the greatest grassland, the greatest wetland, inland wetland in South America, is totally on fire right now. So it heavily depends on what's happening with each of the systems and how can we adapt and manage them. But thinking about the fact that we can use nature to our benefit. So, for example, in areas of hurricanes and also on monsoons and or in areas of cyclones. And we have seen a lot more cyclones in Asia, for example, and the Pacific than ever before. If we don't protect and restore the areas of wetlands and mangroves that are protecting the cities, that are protecting the populations, we will continue to have surges that are absolutely devastating for people. So how can we think about reestablishing those systems where nature is part of the solution? And that is an incredibly important message. And I failed to say, and I had a slide about this and I don't know where it went. We are talking all the time about climate change and resolving the climate change crisis without realizing that by restoring nature, we will be resolving 30%, at least 30% of the problem of the climate change crisis. And it's cheaper and more effective. So nature has to become the heart of our solutions everywhere and anywhere.
Thank you.
Manoj Bhatt has raised his hand. Manoj, you can kindly ask your question.
The President Grace can ask now. Manoj, I think.
Patricia, thank you. That was a really insightful talk and I really enjoyed it. So in South Africa, we have Birdlife South Africa. So I would assume that Birdlife is represented is it in all countries or most countries?
So we are a family of 115 organizations in 113 countries. So Birdlife South Africa is the Birdlife partner in South Africa, and I have an extraordinary relationship with Mark, the chief executive. I used to work in South Africa many, many years ago. I love your country. I used to have projects in the Northern Cape. And it's one of those countries that I absolutely love. So yes, we are in 113 countries. So in Africa, we have, I'm trying to remember the exact number, but I think we are in 29 countries in Africa, and it depends on the region. But we are in the map that I showed, those blue countries are countries that have BirdLife partners. So we're trying to make sure that we are on those countries that have the greatest biodiversity opportunities and problems. Yeah, we're in more countries than any other international conservation organization.
Yeah, so the reason for my question was that for us as Rotarians and Rotary clubs, possibly our first point in trying to get involved in BirdLife International is to find out if you have an agency within the country that you are at, because I think every country has different needs or different circumstances or different challenges when it comes to preserving nature. So I think as Rotarians, we could possibly reach out to the BirdLife that is represented in our country to find out how we can get involved and how we can make a difference.
Absolutely. And I would be more than happy to share with you guys the list of the countries and the list of the names of the partners that are present in the different countries. And I'm wondering if there is actually an opportunity of connecting with the Rotarians at the global level, so we can provide this information so that that can be shared with all the Rotary clubs. And yes, you can become supporters or volunteers or help out the local BirdLife partner. Absolutely. So I'm happy to share that information with you. And I'm gonna very quickly look into our website so I can put the link there of the names and of the local BirdLife partners, so you can have them.
Yeah, Manoj.
Yes. Can I share?
Thank you, Vijay. Patricia, it was a real great insight in your presentation. Really loved it. Thanks. Before I go on to the next level, I would like to just say one thing. When we need to catch a big fish, we normally use a small fish as the bait. So recently, we in most parts of India, we had this religious festival called Kagad Purnima, which was celebrating the, giving food and praying towards the birds also. maybe Birdlife would be also benefited if they use such events or even religion as a bait for people to get environmentally conscious.
Absolutely. The faith-based community is it could be an incredible ally of the conservation of world and of nature. And we're in the process of working with the Vatican right now, but there is a big faith-based community that is supporting the protection of local forests by local communities and indigenous peoples around the world. It's actually an initiative led by Jane Woodall. I think it is you're absolutely right. I mean, the minute that you start thinking about faith, it doesn't really matter what type of faith you're talking about. There are incredible associations between the scriptures of each of the faiths, of the formal faiths, and nature. So we have a big program in the Middle East and the Gulf, and I was absolutely in awe when I was presented with certain parts of the Quran that relate to the admiration, the respect, and the love for nature. And that happens in Christianity, that happens in Buddhism, that happens in Hinduism. It happens everywhere. And it's just a matter of rethinking a little bit and using that cultural value that people have to adjust ourselves to connect back to nature. Because I think part of the problem that we have been seeing over the last 50, 70 years is that while people go and migrate more to cities, we get disconnected from nature. We don't understand that nature is our survival, that we survive upon the well-being of nature. So making that connection again and using faith for that is an extraordinary opportunity. And I have to admit, the conservation community have not done enough about working directly with the faith-based community, but it is definitely something that is starting to happen. Thank you for that suggestion.
Kedarji, you wanted to share something.
I just want to share that within the Mumbai metropolitan region, we have created a flamingo park at Airoli. It's within the Thane Creek. And it was a joint effort with Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, and the international bodies, supported by IUCN. And what we have done is it's a large sanctuary and a park where flamingos are coming every year. And we have opened it to public so that they can see the flamingos. Plus, there is a group of citizens who have initiated an effort to protect the flamingos which visit Navi Mumbai, because it's along the creek, Thane Creek. There also you will find we have done quite a bit of it. But only the question which is coming in here is within BNHS, within Birdlife and Rotary and the government bodies, how do we create a kind of a consortium wherein we can go ahead and get involved and protect other birds also. I'm a BHNS member, so I was looking at from that angle. I'm a Rotarian and a BNHS member. So how do we take ahead and how can Birdlife help us?
I think you're absolutely right. There's an opportunity of joining forces that we haven't really explored, and I'm ever so grateful that I was able to attend Deepak's presentation. So then I was introduced to Bijay, and then we can actually have this conversation. So thanks so much for that. I just put in the chat the link of our website that has the list of all of our partners around the world. And you being a member of BNHS, you are part of the Birdlife family. You are found as one of the 10 million members and supporters that are helping Birdlife, because that's how we work. So joining forces with our local partners is incredibly important. Reaching out to them, and I think there is something that more systematic that we could think about on how we can join forces between the Rotarians and the Birdlife family. So I will keep exploring that with you and with Vijay, if that's okay.
Sure, it will be great.
Mahendraji, you wanted to ask a question.
I'll be back in 1 second, sir.
I think Wangari wanted to ask a question. Angari, you can in the meantime unmute and ask.
Hello.
Mahendraji, 1 minute. Now let.
So my question is, Ethiopia wants to build one of the largest dams that we have to collect water from River Nile. And River Nile goes through 11 countries from Uganda all the way to Egypt, yeah? If this happens, how will Birdlife be affected? Because I'm assuming if the dam is between Ethiopia going all the way to Egypt, yeah, I'm assuming there'll be a deficit of water and there'll be some disruption, you know, so how is it going to affect, you know, the Birdlife?
So that's actually a very good example, and thank you so much for bringing that up. That is the magic of Birdlife, that we work beyond borders, that we collaborate, and that we can actually join forces to make sure that we are making the best decisions possible for development. So I'm not aware, but I will bring that up to my Africa team. I have a really good relationship with the head of the partner in Ethiopia, EWNHS. I will bring that up to them and see how much they're actually paying attention to this. Sometimes it happens that we don't even know about these programs. You know, you have heard it in the news, or we haven't heard about the plans from the government, and because the demand of our work is so big, sometimes we just don't know about this thing. So I will bring that up to the Ethiopian partner as well as to my Africa team, and then we'll start figuring out how we can work together and what is this measure. We have there was a mention about renewable energy. Someone was talking about renewable energy earlier on in the call. And that is an example of how we work. So what happens is that the Birdlife team that I manage, my science team, works very closely with the partners, identifying what are the key problems that they're seeing. So for example, in the case of renewable energy, we're all in favor of transitioning to renewable energy as quickly as possible. But what we want to do is make sure that the infrastructure that is set for renewable energy is done in a safe way. So whether it is hydro dams, whether it is wind power generation, or whether it is solar farms, that they are placed in the right places so they don't end up damaging nature while we're trying to save climate change or reduce the impact of climate change. So the decisions that we end up doing are decisions that we do collaboratively. And it's great that you bring that example to me, because I am going to be with the Birdlife partnership in Africa. So all of the partners of Africa coming together virtually, unfortunately, right now in November to plan the next 10-year strategy for Birdlife. So I will be bringing this issue to them and make sure that we have a response.
Another question, one last question, please. We used to have flamingos in our country until, you know, the government, you know, did a bit of mismanagement when it came to waste management, yeah? So this is a loss for us, Kenya, as a country, because we've lost something very important. We don't have flamingos anymore, and it was one of our tourist attractions. So how can you advise on waste management to be able to, you know, help in, you know, the what do you call this, the, you know, the helping the country and, you know, to save lives for the birds?
See, that is a really good example of how nature, by not taking care of nature, we're actually jeopardizing our future, not only in terms of the role that these species play in the system, but also in the opportunities of generating jobs and income. As you said, flamingos are incredible attractions. And in Mumbai, you guys were talking about this beautiful park. I was so pleased to see with some of the people of BNHS were sending me all of these pictures of the flamingos arriving in and being in the, the edges and the wetland that is close to the airport, because they're they're being free to be able to get there. And they're an incredible attraction. People go to some places just to see flamingos, and many. I mean, the bird tourism has grown so much around the world. I mean, not this year because of the pandemic, but all over the world has become such a huge attraction that has generated millions of dollars of jobs and opportunities for income for people around the world. But if we destroy nature, if we don't take care of the wetlands, if we drain all the water from those wetlands, then the flamingos don't come back. And then you lose all of the opportunities of those jobs. So normally what we do is work with the governments when we see in Lake Tana in Tanzania, in parts of Kenya as well. We work very closely with the Kenyan partner of Birdlife Nature Kenya to make sure that we campaigned against soda ash soda ash factory that was going to completely destroy Lake Tana. Lake Tana is the largest breeding area of lesser flamingos in the world. And with that soda ash factory, the lake was going to be completely destroyed, and it was absolutely unsustainable to maintain that breeding area of flamingos. And we're not saying not to development. We know and we acknowledge that we do need to develop, and we need to develop properly. But we have to make sure that we do it in a way that is not going to jeopardize critical areas that species depend on. So that can help, generate jobs. I mean, the avitourism, the bird tourism in Lake Tana is huge because of the flamingos.
Mahendra ji, please. Unmute, kindly unmute.
Ma'am, I would like to know, I have a garden of approximately 2,500 square feet, and I had never seen birds earlier than last 1.5 years. Once we planted brinjal, lady's finger, and tomatoes, I'm seeing many birds, and I wish to add them. So is it connected or it is a coincidence? Can you please guide me on this?
Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is connect you to BNHS. The Bombay Natural History Society has a fantastic guideline on gardens and garden vegetation that can help not only birds, but pollinators as well. I mean, it is incredibly, this year that we have been bounded to work from home. Before this year, normally I would travel because in so many countries and we have so many programs. I travel about 50% of my time, and I had never had the chance to pay attention to what happens really in my tiny garden. I have a garden that is probably 3 by 3. That's it.
No, 1 by 1.
Over this period of time, I was able to plant not only some plants, but also ensure that the feeders were active. And the amount of species of birds that I have seen in this garden has been extraordinary. And I'm in the middle of England. In India, you have extraordinary birds. So there's huge opportunity of making your space a friendly space for birds. I would say connect with, and I will connect you to BNHS. BNHS has an extraordinary guide on how to make areas friendly to birds. But also, I think it's an extraordinary reminder of how connected we are to the rest of the world. Birds come from different parts. In some cases, they're migrating thousands of kilometers, and they land in your garden. So how can we make sure that we're providing them with the space and the species that they need so they can land safely, and think about our role in that system? So, yeah.
We'll take last two questions. President Gabriel, kindly unmute and ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much, past President Vijay and Patricia. Wonderful presentation there. My question is partly related or closely associated with what Ngari Wangari of Kilimani has indicated. Now, growing up from my neck of the woods, I used to see so many birds, but now one of them is absent, which is the vulture. Yeah. I'm wondering why I can't see vultures anymore within the environment of my neck of the wood. But you will see them now more in South Africa and some other parts of Africa. Why is it so? Or what can be done to be able to return vultures who are not just, who are birds, as I see them, because they fly, even though they don't seem acceptable amongst our people? What could be the reason? And how best can we do to return them to the system? Thank you very much.
I'm so happy that you made that question, Gabriel. Because you're in Nigeria, right? Yeah.
Yes, he is in Nigeria.
Yes, so, yeah, I'm in Nigeria.
I am incredibly sad to tell you that Nigeria has wiped 95% of the population of vultures. And you know why? Because people are trading parts of vultures, mainly the heads, for traditional based medicine, and thinking without evidence whatsoever that thinking that if they use or smoke heads of vultures, they will be able to see in the future. So we have a massive problem because of the 11 species of vultures in Africa. Four are these close to extinction, to losing them completely, and the other 7 have gone into the scale of extinction, much, much closer to extinction. So what are we doing? We are trying to understand how the trade system works in Nigeria, not only Nigeria, but also we just had an episode, and I will put up on the website a story that we just published. Well, not just published because it happened in February, but we published in our website in February. There were 2,000 vultures beheaded in Guinea-Bissau in between December and February, just for the trade. And it's to me it's fascinating in a way, because the reason why we're leaving the COVID pandemic is precisely because we were trading species from Southern Asia and from Africa to be sold at the market in Wuhan. So the virus jumped from something most likely a pangolin or a bat to other species that are being consumed, and now we are in the problem that we are. So I'm going to give you, we are in a massive campaign, and actually this month is Vulture Awareness Month. We had a really beautiful event with Birdlife South Africa. There are 4 reasons why our vultures are disappearing in Africa. Trade is one, and that's mainly in West Africa. But poisoning is a huge problem, direct and indirect poisoning in East Africa and Southeast Africa. Poachers of rhinos and elephants are leaving poison behind in the carcasses of the elephants that they're taking the tusks out, or the rhinos that they're cutting the horns from. So then vultures are not telling them off. The minute that you have a kill, the vultures come in. So the poachers know that by killing the vultures, it would be less easy for them to be found by the rangers. But in northeastern Africa, so in Kenya, Tanzania, and well, I'm sure that in Somaliland as well, vultures are being killed because local communities are poisoning lions and hyenas that are eating their cattle. It's an element of the wildlife-human conflict. But the problem is that because they're poisoning lions and hyenas, then vultures come and feed on those animals, and then they get killed. And for one lion, for one hyena that is poisoned, 160 vultures are dead behind. So we need to stop this. And Birdlife has been actively working on making sure that we protect the vultures in Africa, because we have worked before, and in India and Nepal and Bangladesh, we have been working over the last 12 years to stop the decline of vultures in the South Indian continent. We almost lost, we were at the same stage as we were in Nigeria. 95% of the vultures in India had disappeared, and they had disappeared because farmers and cattle ranchers were using something that is called diclofenac, that is a medicine that is used to reduce inflammation. They were using that for the cattle to extend the life of the cattle. And then the vultures were feeding from the cattle, and they were getting poisoned. So we worked with the Indian government first, and then with the Nepali government and Bangladeshi governments to ban the use of diclofenac at veterinary levels. And we have been able not to recover completely, but we have stabilized the population. We're not declining anymore, and it's starting to recover slowly. So it's the same thing that we need to do in Africa, is figure out how can we change the mentality about the trade in West Africa, and help people understand that vultures are not going to let you see the future, and that they need to be protected, and that they can be a huge service to us. I mean, the minute you have vultures killed in a system, you have to deal with all the rubbish that is around, and the illnesses and the sickness that rubbish brings. In India, one of the reasons why we were able to get the government convinced was because of the relationship between the increase in rabies and the loss of vultures. So the minute that you start losing vulture populations that are not taking care of the carcasses and the rubbish in the rubbish dumps, like what's happening in India, then you have tons of feral dogs coming in and taking that role in the place of the ecosystem. And feral dogs carry rabies, and rabies kill children and kill people. So 20,000 children are being impacted by rabies in India a year. And it is incredibly important to make sure that if we have vultures, they take care of the rabies, because the dogs don't have space to grow in populations that are absolutely uncontrollable. It was going to cost, or it could cost, $2 billion to the Indian government to control the rabies impact, whereas the vultures were doing that for free.
Sorry, Vijay, if I may come in again, I think probably the explanation with regards to the fact that vultures are being killed because of the perception that they could see afar may not necessarily be the case, because going by my example and then going from my neck of the wood, the reason why Africans, or what I saw why people don't like vultures, was because of their dependence on carcasses, on anything that is dead. And therefore, anything that feeds on a substance that is dirty doesn't seem to be attractive to the population. Now, if on the other side, the vultures can be seen to see very far, is it also possible for government to begin to use them as a means of, assisting the security agencies to begin to discover scenes of crimes and some other, as a form or something that can be used for intelligence gathering? Is it possible? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is possible if we remember that you don't have to smoke heads of vultures to see the future. I think it is possible if we remember and remind governments that by protecting vultures, you are protecting the system. You're protecting the management of the rubbish, that you're protecting your children from rabies like it happened in India. I think it's a matter of education and knowledge, really, and learning. So that's what we are learning right now. I mean, we like you, 7 years ago, we were like completely not understanding what was happening with the vulture populations, because I remember being in Liberia and in Sierra Leone and having, you know, vultures everywhere, and then going back and not seeing them ever in any of the places where I used to be. So it collapsed really quickly, and it is something that we need to address very urgently. So I'm gonna place here in the chat room the information about our African Vultures campaign. Take a look at it. There's a beautiful video there. And join us and help us, and just spread the word. Let your people know in Nigeria that we are killing our vultures and we need to stop it.
President,
thank you very much, Patricia. Wonderful presentation there.
Thank you.
President Patrick, kindly ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much, Patricia. My namesake. I really enjoyed your presentation. I have two questions. My question is, first of all, has to do with the time I visited the southern part of Nigeria where oil is being produced, and there's a lot of gas flaring and a lot of environmental pollution going on there. So I noticed that the cattle egrets in that community, which are usually white, started becoming black. And initially I was like, is this a new type of bird or whatever? And then I noticed that when the rain fell, the colors would change from black to white. And then I became confused and I was like, is this bird changing color or is it something else? Then I now was explained that it's the soot from the environment that's coloring the cattle egrets and making them black. So, of course, I'm sure that has a lot of effect on the health of those birds. Eventually, a lot of them might die earlier than they're supposed to. But my question is, one, how does your organization, does it have any experience with this kind of massive pollution, and especially in oil producing states that are still doing gas flaring and all that, and how it affects bird life in those areas? And then my second question has to do with extinction of birds. That's because even from the stories of the vultures, I'm sure you can see that we're losing a lot of wildlife, especially birds, as a result of a lot of practices globally. So are there attempts to actually have some of these birds and keep them, especially those that are going extinct, track them, keep them safe, ensure that they repopulate in a safe environment, and then if they have sustainable numbers, releasing them? Because I know there are some attempts to do that with some species like white rhino and all that, but I know birds are extremely difficult to do that because they're always in flight, and there may be some other difficulties of mating and all that. So is there a part of the organization that has work that's specifically targeted towards extinction?
Yes, thank you for that question. And on the cattle egrets, I mean, the problem is that we are changing the system so much that poor birds are also changing. And in terms of extinctions, we have a preventing extinctions program that works on the most urgent groups of birds that are going extinct around the world. So the work that we are doing, for example, with vultures is part of that preventing extinction. We measure how closer to extinctions birds are, and then we kind of dive in and tackle those that are most important. It's a lovely program, and it helps us because in some cases the reasons why birds are going extinct are varied, but a lot of them are related to the fact that we are destroying their habitats. or we are trading them, or we're over hunting them. You know, we put out a report last, when was it, 2016, that documented over 25 million migrant birds between Europe and Africa being killed by you know, excessive hunting, and hunting that is not for feeding people. It's hunting that is, you know, non-controlled. And we are, you know, BirdLife is not an anti-hunting organization. We understand and believe that people, if they hunt sustainably, it is possible. And we work with many people, particularly in the Middle East, with falconers, for example, and figuring out ways of using falcons as a hunting mechanism, but in a sustainable way. Same thing in terms of setting up quotas and hunting quotas in key countries in Europe, and was just celebrating earlier this morning that the French government, for the first time in the history of the country, decided to put a ban on hunting turtle doves. Turtle doves are one of these migrant birds that go between Africa and Europe, and it's a beautiful tiny dove that is incredibly close to extinction because of the overhunting. So it is hugely important, and I'm hoping that we can and then work together. I think what we need to remember is that we live in a planet that has to be in balance. So the minute that we do too much of something else is going to happen. There's a cascading effect. And we're responsible for our actions. So, but we are also responsible for the solutions. We can make it happen, and the solutions are there.
Now the last question by my president Patrick from Rotary Club of Thane. Patrick, kindly unmute and Philip, President Philip, kindly unmute and
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, I would like to find out whether you've been doing some jobs with National Geography, and also it seems to your focus seems more to be on birds. What about wildlife? Do you do some work on that as well? Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that well. Can you say it one more time? I'm sorry.
Yes. Have you been doing some work on wildlife?
Yes, I mean, we work with all type of wildlife. We don't only work with birds. If you would know, we are in Sumatra protecting one of the last strands of forest, mainly because there's tigers. We are working with other species of mammals and amphibians and everything that is related. We just use birds as the entry point because they're associated with all other types of wildlife. We're working right now very closely with the anti-poaching community, for example, and make we can that we can protect and because we know that wildlife trade is part of the problem. We're seeing it. The COVID pandemic came out of wildlife trade. So yes.
Now I would request President Anand Ghandre from the Rotary Club of Thane New City to kindly present a certificate to our guest for a wonderful presentation. Anandji, please. Kadraji, kindly unmute.
Yeah, I'm very proud and privileged. It's my proud and privilege to present this certificate of appreciation to our today's guest speaker, Patricia Zurita. I read out this certificate of appreciation. This is presented to Patricia Zurita for enlightening us by visiting our club as a speaker on the topic role biodiversity plays in our health and future on 16 September 2020. signed by Rotarian Tej Singh Ahedi and President and Rotarian Umesh Patel, Honorary Secretary. Patricia, please accept our appreciation and certificate of appreciation from all the clubs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been an honor and a privilege to be with all of you today. Thank you for having me. And thanks so much for all your interest and your very fantastic questions. If there's anything else I can help with, just let me know. As President Grace was saying, there are many BirdLife partners all over the world. I sent you the links. Reach out to them, and if you cannot reach out to them, let me know. We will put you in touch, and it's just about working together. We're on the same planet.
Now I would request President Mangal Tiwari from Rotary Club of Young Dombivli to present a well-deserved vote of thanks before we end for fellowship.
I'm not the president. Mahesh Kharote is the president.
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, so Maheshji, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am Mahesh Kharote, Rotarian Mahesh Kharote, President of Rotary Club of Young Dombivli. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity for a vote of thanks. First of all, our speaker for today, Patricia Zurita. Thank you so much for wonderful and informative session on the role biodiversity plays in our health and future. And definitely, we have gathered so important information about what BirdLife International is doing, and it will definitely help us to rethink about the bird life and biodiversity. And there were so many members and participants attended today's meeting from various cities, various countries like Kenya, Uganda, Washington, Indonesia, South Africa, Dubai, Singapore. Thank you so much, all of you, for participate today's speaker session. There were some members from various cities in India also, from Nashik, from Bhubaneswar and New Delhi. Thank you so much for attending. And last but not the least, our host clubs. Let's have a huge round of applause. Rotary Club of Thane Royals, Rotary Club of Young Dombivli, Rotary Club of Dombivli Premium, Rotary Club of Ulhasnagar East, Rotary Club of Thane New City, Rotary Club of Thane Downtown, and our international co-host, Rotary Club of Abuja Minister Hills, Nigeria. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much, President, and all the club members for arranging this beautiful session. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, Maheshji, for the wonderful vote of thanks. I now request our club secretary, Umeshji, to give a secretarial announcement.
Hello, friends. It was a wonderful evening, and Patricia, your talk was such a wonderful one that could garner participation from almost more than 8 countries, and we had participation from more than 31 clubs across the globe, and with having attendance of plus 60 plus members at a point of time. Thank you for that. Apart from that, we have a happy announcement where one of our members' son, Kedar Putane, is celebrating his birthday on 21st of September. So we wish him on behalf of the whole club. And our next meeting will be held on 23rd of September, evening 8 p.m., where we'll be having speaker Mr. Kaul, who is an author, and he'll be speaking on the legendary women of Kashmir. Thank you.
Thank you, Umeshji. And I would like to once again thank all our international guests and the guests for joining, and also all our co-host clubs for joining us and making it a grand success. Thank you all. I adjourn the meeting and invite everybody to join for a fellowship.